Ashes of the Dead, Part 6, the finale, the last signal humans strike back. The world had gone silent. The ashfall no longer whispered. The hive no longer breathed. But to end the apocalypse forever, Clara Rowe must do the unthinkable: connect her mind to the hive and burn it from the inside. Tonight, humanity will either win or the world will belong to the dust. Clara heard the end of the world before she saw it. It started as a faint hiss, barely audible, curious rather than frightening, a soft, constant whisper like static in a speaker. Then, as the days passed, it grew louder. It crept into every room, every street, every device, like an invisible tide swallowing up the silence between heartbeats. It wasn't sound, not really. It was the hive thinking, and it was getting ready. Since the destruction of the Mother of Dust, something had changed. Satellite scans showed the same ashfall circling the globe, the same underground nodes flickering beneath cities and mountains. But the patterns had shifted. It's not building big cores anymore, Dr. Stein said, staring at the global data screens. No more central queens, no more mothers. It's flattened itself. Javier squinted at the map. What does that mean? Clara stood beside him, arms folded tightly, trying to ignore the faint pressure humming in her head. It means it learned, she said quietly. Every time we crushed a heart, it felt it. So it stopped having a heart. Instead, the hive had become something else. Every dust mote carried a sliver of its mind. Every underground node held a shard of its memory. Every collector lantern fragment now existed as a pattern rather than an object. It was everywhere and nowhere all at once. And humanity's window to stop it was closing. The bunker in Switzerland was the last place on Earth that still felt halfway stable. Deep under a mountain, accessed through armored elevators and triple-sealed blast doors, it housed what remained of the Coalition's core. Scientists, soldiers, engineers, and too many people with haunted eyes. The air tasted of metal, old coffee, and exhausted hope. But in Laboratory 7, hope was all they had left. Clara sat in a chair with cables attached to her temples, chest, and the back of her neck. A sleek headset hummed faintly round her skull. Her reflection in the glass panel ahead of her looked pale, thinner, older. Stein paced back and forth in front of a bank of monitors, her hair pulled back into a tight knot. Lab coat creased. Javier leaned against a console, watching Clara with that mix of worry and respect she'd come to recognize as his default. "You sure you wanted to do this?" he asked. Clara smirked weakly. "You say that like we have other options." Stein stopped pacing. "We've called it Project Prometheus," she said. "Resonant cognitive interference. Catchy," Javier said dryly. "Also terrifying." Stein ignored him. "Clara, you are still the only documented human who's had direct, two-way neural contact with the hive and survived with self-identity intact. It knows you. It's patterned itself around you in some ways. That makes you valuable," Clara finished. "And dangerous." "Yes," Stein said. Both on the main screen, swirling patterns pulsed complex waves of color and shape that Clara barely understood, but somehow felt. They were her brain waves, recorded during her last encounter with the hive. "We tried everything," Stein said, her voice flat but eyes burning. "Antivirals, nanotech, vaccine vectors, EMP bursts, atmospheric scrubbing. Nothing scales. The hive adapts faster than we can engineer antibodies. So instead," Clara said, "we attack the one thing it can't just recode. Consciousness," Stein said. "Pattern. Meaning," she pointed at the monitor. "When you fought it in Arroyo Negro, you pushed something back into its refusal. Defiance, selfhood. We saw the effects. It flinched, it faltered, and after we crushed that core, it reorganized." Javier frowned. "You think she hurt its ego, in a manner of speaking," Stein said. "It's not logical for a purely opportunistic predator to waste energy chasing anomalies like Clara, and yet it did. It is still searching for her pattern. That means part of it is fixated, obsessive." She looked back at Clara. "What if we weaponize that?" Clara swallowed. "You wanted to feed that fixation back into the hive, like a virus that only infects software, not hardware." Stein smiled humorlessly. "For once, its evolution works against it. It distributed itself to avoid physical destruction. That means if we can contaminate its thinking, its self-organization, we don't need to destroy every node. We just need to teach every node the wrong lesson. Javier nodded slowly. Confuse the signal, not the structure. Exactly, Stein said. We'll amplify Clara's neural pattern, encode it with specific countermems refusal, self-limitations, blocks, and broadcast it into the Ash network through her link. If it takes root in enough places, the Hive starts sabotaging itself. Clara exhaled. Worst case, Stein didn't sugarcoat it. It overwhelms you. You become its favorite puzzle piece until there's nothing left of you, and it learns how to scrub out human selfhood more effectively. Javier shot her a glare. You're supposed to reassure her. No, Clara said quietly. She's supposed to tell me the truth. She looked at the cables attached to her arms. All my life I've been surviving things that were supposed to kill me, she whispered. Maybe that's not a curse. Maybe that was the training. Javier's jaw clenched. This feels like more than training, he muttered. Feels like you're volunteering to step into a meat grinder because the rest of us are out of ideas. You're not out of ideas, Clara said, glancing at Stein. You have the Resonants. Stein nodded and turned to the side wall, where a row of glass panels revealed another room. Inside, 12 people sat in chairs similar to Clara's. Different ages, different skin colors, different histories. All wired, all focused, all afraid. These are the others, Stein said softly. The exceptions, people the collectors went after. Survivors from incomplete collector attempts. Strange immune profiles. All with neural signatures that don't fully match baseline human patterns. Javier grunted. You mean all the weirdos the Hive thinks are special? Yes, Stein said. We call them Resonants. On their own, they're just noise. Together, aligned with Clara's pattern, they're an amplifier. Clara studied their faces drawn, scared, determined. You all volunteered? She asked through the speaker. A woman with gray braids nodded. We're already on its list, she said. Might as well hit it back. A teenage boy managed a nervous grin. If this works, do we get, like, medals or something? You get to keep breathing, Clara said. Good enough, he nodded. Good enough, Stein faced Clara again. This is the choice. You link to them. All of you link to the Hive. We broadcast once. One global shot. We either overload its coordination and force it into a dormant state, or, Javier pressed, or we teach it exactly how our minds resist, Stein said, her voice low, and give it everything it needs to take that away. Clara closed her eyes. She saw Briar Hollow, the mother of dust, the ashfall drifting over play parks and balconies and coastlines. She saw Eric Grand disappearing in a quiet Swedish park. She saw the thousands embedded in Hive walls. It wanted the world. It wanted her. She was tired of being hunted. Do it, she said. Before I change my mind. They called the operation the last signal. Clara sat upright, the headset snug around her skull. Electrodes itched against her skin. The lights in the lab dimmed as power rerouted to the neural transmission array. Over the intercom, Riva's voice crackled. He sounded more worn than ever. Rowe, he said. No speeches. You already know what's at stake. Just come back, if you can. I'll see what's left, she replied. Javier stepped into her line of sight, eyes shining with something she pretended not to see. If this works, he said, I'm buying you a terrible coffee and you're going to complain about it. And it's going to be the best sound I've heard in years. She smiled faintly. Deal. Stein stood behind the console, fingers lightly resting on the activation key. On my mark, she said. All resonance ready. Global broadcast channels open. Atmospheric ash density map locked. Underground nodes mapped. Clara, once I start, you will feel it. Clara swallowed. What should I do? Stein's eyes softened for the first time in days. Just be yourself, she said. Louder than we've ever been. The countdown began. 10.9.8. In the other room, the 12 resonants closed their eyes. 7.6.5. Clara's pulse raced. The faint hum in her head grew louder, deeper, almost hungry. 4.3.2. The world seemed to lean in. 1, Stein said. Broadcast. She pressed the key. The lab filled with an almost inaudible tone to high, to low, somehow both. The monitors flared with color as patterns cascaded outward from Clara's neural map through the resonant array. Clara's vision exploded. She was no longer in the chair. She was no longer in her body. She was in the ash. Every speck, All at once, she felt the world as the Hive did, an intricate lattice of heat, motion, thought. Under cities, its nerves buzzed. In the sky, its particles drifted like spores on invisible currents. In abandoned tunnels, its dormant nodes waited. It felt enormous. It felt unstoppable. And it felt her. You again. The presence surged. It didn't come as a wave this time. It came as a trillion filaments, converging on her from every direction. Every dust mote turned its attention. Every note pinged. Every lingering hive echo tried to crawl into the shape of her mind. Clara felt it testing her running comparisons, matching her current pattern to memories of past contact. You are still not taken. No, she said. Though she had no mouth here, the resonance flared around her 12 other minds linked to hers like pillars, stabilizing her, amplifying her. Their fear, hope, and stubbornness joined her own. The Hive tasted them too. Many of you. Defective, useful. It tried to seize them. Stein's encoded countermems fired. Buried inside Clara's pattern were not just memories of resistance, but carefully crafted conceptual traps, loops of refusal, paradoxes about selfhood, boundaries that said this far and no farther, ideas wrapped in emotions, emotions wrapped in defiance. They rode along the same channels the Hive used to probe and began to unpack inside it. Everywhere at once, Clara felt parts of the Hive pause, not stop, not yet, but hesitate. Nodes that had been wholly obedient jolted as new signals slipped between impulses. Do not spread forever. Do not eat everything, stop, enough. A mimicry of survival instincts twisted into self-limitation. The Hive tried to sort it out. It couldn't. The thoughts weren't foreign in the way a toxin was foreign. They were built from its own observations of Clara, repurposed. They felt familiar enough to sneak past its filters. For the first time, the Hive encountered something like doubt, and that terrified it. It reacted. It surged at Clara like fire through dry grass, trying to burn the source before the infection spread. Clara screamed. Her body arched in the lab chair, muscles rigid, but she didn't feel it. She was consumed in the storm. Vast underground tunnels lit up in her mind, bursting with hostile awareness. Clouds of ash twisted in furious spirals. Collectors half formed from drifting particles snapped into and out of existence. The Hive shoved images at her nightmares of a world fully consumed. Humanity woven into its superstructure, every thought bent toward its survival. It promised her a place inside it, a place of importance, a place of power. She shoved back with one word that burned through every node she touched. No. The resonance echoed it. No, no, no. They pushed that word into every ash mote, every ember vein, every half-built core. The encoded patterns behind it whispered quiet sabotage. You can stop. You aren't hungry. You can sleep. The Hive resisted. Then the feedback hit. Because the Hive was now everywhere. The contaminated thoughts spread faster than it could clean them. Every node that received the interference and tried to flag it as error sent a signal to others to correct it. But those signals carried the infection too. Like a brain attacking itself, Clara felt the global mind stutter. Underground nodes misfired, sending signals out of sync. Ash clouds that had been drifting with purpose began to wander. Collectors standing mid-street flickered, their lanterns dimming. Stein's voice cut faintly through the maelstrom. Global activity dropping 30%-40-50- my God. The Hive roared, not like before, not confident. This was rage. It targeted Clara directly, focusing its entire remaining coherence into a single, brutal thrust. It tried to wrap around her mind, crush it, unravel it neuron by neuron. Pain lanced through her. Bits of her memories flickered. Her mother's face, a childhood birthday, the way Vargas had smiled before everything went wrong. Clara, Javier's shout echoed from somewhere far away. Stay with us. She couldn't hold much longer. But she didn't have to, because the Hive had made one mistake. It believed she was alone. She wasn't. The 12 resonants poured their focus into her. The woman with gray braids flared like a beacon, sharing a lifetime of stubborn survival. The teenage boy hurled his raw terror and determination into the fray like a weapon. Others added. Grief, fury, love, all wrapped around Clara like armor. The Hive tried to swallow them. Its thoughts tangled on the very patterns Stein had seeded. Clara felt it glitch, then fracture, Then, something snapped, not inside her, inside it. Around the globe, ash clouds stilled. Then, one by one, they fell not in graceful spirals, but straight down, like dust shaken from a giant sheet. Underground, hive structures stopped pulsing. Ember veins dimmed. In deep, forgotten tunnels, ashwalkers froze mid-step, their ember eyes flickering out. Collectors in transit on dark streets collapsed into harmless piles of gray. The static hissing, the air cut off. The silence afterward felt wrong, heavy, final. In the bunker lab, Clara's body slumped. Monitors flatlined for a second. Then her heart thudded again weakly. Stein slammed her hand on the emergency override. "Get Med in here, now." Javier ripped the headset off Clara's head, panic tightening his throat. "Clara? Clara?" Her eyelids fluttered. She squinted up at him. "You still owe me terrible coffee," she whispered. He laughed, a shaky, broken sound. "You ridiculous woman." Stein stared at the global feed on the main screen, hardly daring to breathe. Node after node faded, not disappearing, not destroyed, simply going. Quiet, not dead, dormant, like spores waiting for spring. She swallowed. "We did it," she said. "We pushed it into systemic dormancy. It's asleep. Can it wake up?" Javier asked. "Yes," Stein said honestly, "but not like before. Its coordination pathways are scrambled. The self-sabotage pattern is tangled in its basic functions. If it tries to ramp up again, the same interference will start tearing at its mind. It can never be one coherent thing again without pulling the knife we just pushed into its own brain. So we didn't kill it," Clara murmured. "We made it." "Afraid of itself," Stein nodded slowly. "We made its own evolution dangerous to it." Clara lay back, exhausted, every muscle aching. "So this is what winning feels like," she muttered. "Still ash everywhere, still ruined cities, but no more collectors, no more mothers, just dust." "Just dust," Javier confirmed. For the first time in months, the pressure in Clara's head was gone. Not muted, gone. She'd never realized how loud the hive had been until the silence replaced it. The years that followed weren't easy. They rebuilt, because humans always did. People swept ash from streets, roofs, train tracks. Children grew up knowing that the dust in the wind was once a mind that had tried to devour them. Stein's team became the Dormancy Watch, the global program tasked with monitoring any sign of hive reactivation. Resonants were tested, supported, studied not as weapons, but as citizens who had once carried the war in their skulls. Clara tried, briefly, to retire. She lasted for months. The world was quieter, but not safe. Pockets of active ash still existed in isolated places, flickering like bad memories. Someone had to keep going into those places and make sure they never turned into something worse. She and Javier took a small team and became something new, not soldiers against an invincible enemy, but hunters of leftover embers. Every time they found a faintly pulsing node in some forgotten tunnel or facility, they tagged it, measured it, and watched it flicker into dormancy under the same interference patterns Stein had perfected. Little deaths, little victories, no more planetary apocalypses. Once, years later, Clara stood alone on a hill overlooking a city as the sun was setting. Ash still dusted the streets in thin, harmless layers. People walked dogs, bought groceries, laughed, argued, lived. The wind picked up, sending little whirls of gray spinning into the air. She watched them quietly. "Are you still in there?" she asked the dust under her breath. "Somewhere, tiny and afraid of your own thoughts," silence answered. She didn't feel any pressure in her mind. No presence, no watching, just the familiar weight of her own thoughts. Behind her, Javier called, "You coming in? Coffee's going cold." She turned. "Is it terrible?" she asked. "The worst," he said. "Good," she replied, and walked back toward the lights. The ash swirled in the wind behind her, nothing more than powder caught in sunset. Once, it had nearly eaten the world. Now, humans walked on it. And that, Clara thought, was as close to justice as they were ever going to get. The hive may be gone, but the dark never sleeps. If you crave worlds where terror whispers between every heartbeat, step deeper into DreadLoop, where endings are only beginnings.